This is what's going on with this is what is happening at NYU.
It is appropriate to say in this time and to a group this large is a recognition of the atrocities currently happening in Palestine. I want to say that the genocide...
Stop saying that Israel's doing October 7. October 7 was an act of resistance. Please, this is getting people angry. Bro, please read. Stop saying that Israel's doing on October 7. October 7 was an act of resistance. Please, this is getting people angry. Stop comparing. You are so stubborn. Stop saying that Israel's doing on October 7. I'm talking about, when I say that, I am talking to a Western audience, okay? A Western audience that thinks by the way, the person, for the record, the person is mad. This person is mad at me for this take. I'm going to read it to you, and you tell me if you think your liberal mom and dads, if they heard me say this, if they would think this is an incredibly radical take or not. Israel is far worse than Hamas. It has done thousands of October 7s with airstrikes, ground invasions, and mass starvation for 19 months. Anyone who refuses to recognize this fact simply doesn't believe Palestinians are human. There is no moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Hamas is a resistance group that was born out of Israel's violence, that was born out of the Israeli apartheid. Hamas doesn't have an air force. Hamas doesn't have the population demographics or the population registry of the entirety of the Israeli Jewish population, okay, and the Israeli Arab population, their own demographic designations, not mine, okay? This take, chatter, okay, I know what you mean, but people on Twitter will call you liberal Zionists. I don't give a fuck what people on Twitter will call me. People on Twitter can suck me from the back. Do you know what my fucking replies look like on Twitter? It's infested with neo-Nazis and also ultra-Zionists constantly fucking... You think this is a liberal Zionist take? You're fucking deluded, okay? It's Twitter. Who gives a shit? Yes, but you were not saying that on your tweet. Look at the quotes. I don't care. I don't care. This is a fucking incredibly shortened format. Anyway, there is a level of permissible speech. There is a level of permissible speech that allows people to enter public discourse without getting an endless amount of shit and deplatforming, okay? Everyone plays a different role here. I always word the things that I'm saying carefully because I want to be effective to the audiences that I'm speaking to, okay? Shut the fuck up. I know what I'm doing. You do you. I'm going to keep doing me. Do you understand? Holy shit. Like, look at the replies. Who violated the ceasefire in place up until October 7th? I will await your answer. You also think the Allies were worse than the Axis? I don't think that. It's not for you. Osama will get hate from Red Triangle, Hammer, and Sickle Twitter accounts and Bad Empanada. I know, exactly. So, is 100% a bad empanada watcher. Are we really at the point that saying killing civilians is bad? Israel does it far more than Hamas, so they're a much greater evil. Is a bad Zionist take? What the fuck is going on, man? Okay, don't get your liberal panties in a bunch, Cloud District enjoyer. This is also the other side of this fucking equation where people just like lose their minds. No, that chatter is not incorrect in terms of like what I leave out of a situation like this. Because there is no moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas, because Hamas is a resistance group that has become more radicalized over time due to Israel's violence. Hamas does not have the logistics or the weapons or the targeting systems that Israel has in an effort to that would allow them to basically conduct careful striking and careful and precise targeting in the same way that Israel has that capacity. There is no moral equivalence between the two. But even if there was a moral equivalence, Israel is still far, 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 far more incomprehensibly worse than Hamas. Okay? That's it. That's it. That's simply the point. Okay? And I'm not bringing that up in this situation. Classic Ultra using what Twitter thinks is at the end all be all of what politics is. No, there is a place for people like that as well. There is absolutely a place for people like that as well. There is. That's why I say everyone has a different role to play in this endeavor, okay? That's why you don't see me fucking setting hard lines and boundaries all the time or positioning myself as like the most rational person in this process. Look at how fucking irrational the tankies are. I don't do that shit. The reason why I don't do that shit is because everyone has a different role to fucking play in this process. That's it. Okay? You will not catch me unless it's like the ACP or whatever. And even then, if they have a decent take on an issue, I'm not going to fucking spend a whole bunch of time. But my hard boundary on this is when people are cynically using Israel's genocide of the Palestinians as a means to promote anti-Semitic sentiment. Okay? That's my boundary on this. My boundary on this is not about the intellectual back and forth or the academic discourse surrounding militant resistance against a far superior Western-backed settler colonial enterprise. I have those conversations on my broadcast with regular frequency, and there are instances where I talk about the tactics and what I think is not the best, okay, or what I think is inevitably going to lead to failure or bring about death and destruction. But the reason why I don't spend a good deal of time constantly fucking ripping into Hamas, regardless of some of the disagreements I might have with Hamas, is because they are the only line of defense currently. They are the only line of defense currently as Israel, as a belligerent occupier, is fucking doing a genocide in Gaza. That's it. It's so fucking stupid to be like, well, I don't really appreciate, I don't know, their trash collection initiatives, or I don't appreciate the way that they're dealing with collaborators, right? Like that is a conversation to have at a separate time and place. There's never been a singular resistance movement that hasn't fucking directly executed civilian collaborators, okay? For example, French resistance, they did that. Holy shit, in the Netherlands, they did way worse shit, okay? ANC was doing the necklacing practice of fucking putting tires on collaborators with the apartheid government and lighting them on fucking fire, okay? But that's not the IRA did kneecapping. This is not the time and place to have these conversations, especially when there's a far larger, far greater evil, okay? Ultimately, the fucking hammer and sickle accounts that don't understand what I'm doing here, don't understand that I'm using the liberal framework to drive home a fucking point, are, you know, they're just chirping into the wind. It's irrelevant. Look at my most normal hater, by the way. This guy said, I love your monotone writing. It reads exactly like you talk, which is like listening in on your grandparents fucking in the other room. Ew. You don't want to keep listening, but you can't stop. What are you saying? You don't want to keep listening, but you can't stop listening to your grandparents fucking? Depraved. Trash collection, Omega lol. Yeah, I mean I'm using that as an example. As Jeremy Scale also brought it up as well. Okay, or even like they're fundamentalists, or even within amongst the leadership, if there's like Islamist fundamentalists that aren't fucking kind to gay people, like that is completely irrelevant in this process. Okay, just like I always draw a comparison to World War II so that fucking dumb liberals can understand where I'm coming from. You don't give a fuck that, Easy Company was comprised of segregationist, homophobic, anti-women American soldiers. They fucking gave the Nazis hell. And I fucking stand proudly on their side on this, okay? They were on the right side. They were on the morally righteous side. Who the fuck cares? Do you go, I don't know. I don't know. Were the Jewish people that were being sent to concentration camps, like, what were their opinions on gay people? No one would ever say that. That's fucking insane. Like, if you make that calculation, you're a morally repugnant monster, right? And then, and this is the same calculation that's taking place when people talk about like the worthiness of victims and the worthiness of resistance groups. And they're doing that because liberals have been taught that like any sort of violent resistance against a state-backed act is supposed to be wrong, especially if that militant resistance is coming from, or this militant resistance is against an American state-backed enterprise. Anyway, let's finish this NYU thing, and then maybe this will help you understand the depravity of our institutions in terms of what you are allowed to fucking say in a position of influence.
Currently occurring is supported politically and militarily by the United States, is paid for by our tax dollars, and has been live streamed to our phones for the past 18 months. And that I do not wish to speak only to my own politics today, but to speak for all people of conscience, and all people who feel the moral injury of this atrocity. And I want to say that I condemn this genocide and complicity in this genocide.
Legend.
Thank you to the class of 2025, and congratulations.
He says silence is complicity, chose to spoke out, and NYU is withholding the student's diploma. NYU student speaker at graduation addresses Palestine, and the school is now withholding his diploma as they pursue disciplinary actions. What an insane thing to do. As an institute of higher learning, it's supposed to be liberal, right? This is supposed to be a bastion of liberalism and bastion of free speech. How many hours have been spent talking about why Nazis actually have to be on college campuses and Nazi professors have to actually freely give their Nazi-ass fucking takes in classrooms and whatnot, only to turn around and be like, oh, you don't like that there's a genocide happening? Like, fuck you. You're actually not allowed to talk. No one cares, you terrorist. No, a lot more people than you think care about this, okay? You're just explaining that you don't care because you are in a circle that is constantly fucking echo chambered into oblivion, into thinking that like what Israel is doing is not seen as morally repugnant by broader Western society. That's it. That's it. And the moment that you actually leave that little hug box to come in here and behave in this antagonistic manner, you realize that you are surrounded by people who do fucking care. The reality of the matter is a lot of people do care about this, okay? In spite of the broad censorship regime that has been implemented. As a matter of fact, the broad censorship regime would not even be implemented if people didn't care about this, actually. That's it. Most Americans are waking up to this fucking reality, and that's precisely the reason why the administration and institutions are doing everything they can to silence people. If this didn't have any motion whatsoever, these institutions would not care. Okay? That's it. But because people are actually recognizing the reality here, that is precisely the reason why institutions are taking action to try to stop people from saying these things. Tariq Kennedy Shawah says, a new cultural hegemony is being formed where Israel is seen, especially by young Americans, as a dystopian big brother who's always watching and who you are not allowed to criticize. This is going to trigger a reckoning when it comes to the U.S.-Israel relationship. But it should also come as no surprise that punishing young Americans for simply criticizing Israel, making Israel appear untouchable, will inevitably fuel anti-Semitism, tropes about Jewish control that emanate from the right. And that might be exactly what Israel is hoping for. Since day one, Israel has sustained itself and thrived off the narrative that it represents the only safe haven for Jews in a world aligned against them. Without that narrative, Israel as a settler colonial project in Palestine becomes obsolete. This is verbatim something that I believe and repeat over and over again. Israel loves when anti-Semitism is popping off in the West. You might say, Hasan, what the fuck do you mean? It's a Jewish nation state. It's in their constitution. What are you talking about? And I'm like, exactly. Okay? Israel's inception is due to the very real pain that Jewish people experienced for thousands of fucking years in the hands of Christians that implemented pogroms and even did the Holocaust, okay? That is a major driving point for Zionism, is that if Israel is a Jewish nation state that has demographic concerns of maintaining its Jewish supermajority as a Jewish nation state, if it doesn't exist in the ways that it does, then it's over. Then Holocaust for every day is the fucking primary argument that Zionists make. And this argument doesn't work if you, as an American Jew, are like, what the fuck are you talking about? I live in the United States of America. I have no loyalty to the Jewish nation state, as you say. That's the weird thing that's going on there. That has nothing to do with me. When American Jews decoupled themselves from Zionism, okay, after an incredible, insurmountable amount of propaganda from a very early age that is baked into the collective consciousness of American Jews by fucking force and constantly reinforced through birthright trips, for example, and things of that nature, with a steady dose of Jews are constantly under attack as a marginalized identity in the diaspora. And that's why you have to fight on behalf of Israel and wage an information war. And you have to do Hasbara, as Ruth Weiss famously fucking said when she gave the game away on numerous fucking speeches, as a matter of fact. If that didn't work anymore, and it doesn't for a lot of young American Jews, as a matter of fact, many of you are fucking in here. That's part of the reason why I'm public enemy number one for a lot of these Israel advocacy groups, like the Apartheid Defense League. Not because they truly think I'm doing dangerous anti-Semitism, but as a matter of fact, because I'm not doing that, and because I'm fighting against dangers of anti-Semitism while simultaneously being steadfast in my defense of the Palestinian emancipatory movement. That is the reason why I am a far scarier threat to the goals of Zionism, at least amongst American Jews, young American Jews. They are fucking terrified that young American Jews are going, why the fuck, why are you doing all this? It's actually having a negative impact on my life. It's actually playing a formative role in anti-Semitism exploding. You're ruining my life. I had a pretty normal life in fucking Sherman Oaks, and now I'm seeing a lot of people Heil Hitler left and right. My classmates are fucking listening to Kanye West. Okay? What the fuck is going on? Because Israel has packaged its actions as though it is defending Judaism when it has nothing to do with Judaism. Yeah, here's ADL, Apartheid Defense League, New York, New Jersey. We're appalled to hear that during the New York University graduation student, speaker altered their approach to speech to make the divisive and false comments about the current Israel-Hamas war. We are thankful for the NYU administration for their strong condemnation and their pursuit of disciplinary action. Come on, dude. Come the fuck on. Cults are bad, okay? Yeah, I agree. And Zionism is a cult. It literally bricks the brains of so many people post October 7. How many people you know that were just like kind individuals, that were normal individuals, that were individuals that you maybe even engaged in like social justice side by side, in like civil liberty struggle side by side, have completely fucking flipped and say Hitlerian shit when it comes to Palestinians. And you're like, what the fuck? Is this the same guy that was at the Black Lives Matter protest with me? How the fuck did this happen? That's a cult. That's cult-like thinking. Yeah. Here's the other side. One thing that's worth noting, this student didn't even say the word Israel. A simple recognition of Palestinian suffering was enough for an American university to withhold the student's diploma and pursue disciplinary actions. Same thing happened after 9/11. People lost their collective shits. No, this is not the same thing happening after 9/11. Because in the approach that Americans have to what's going on, it's very different. 9/11, America was attacked by the Islamic world. That was the argument. Israel is not America. And no matter how hard, well, technically Israel is an extension of America, but in the eyes of Americans, Israel's a foreign country. Do you not understand? So no, Americans don't have that same approach. Because Americans are inherently selfish people, okay? American exceptionalism and American individualism requires Americans to have an incredibly narrow frame of thinking. So if the only impact that Americans are fucking experiencing from this is literally their friends getting fucking apprehended, or people that they see saying things that they agree with, losing job opportunities, losing their fucking diploma for saying something that they agree with, they go, what the fuck is happening here? I don't like that the First Amendment is being eroded. I love American free speech. I don't like that it's being eroded for a fucking foreign nation. What the hell is this? Imagine doing this for Estonia. You know what I mean? Like, there's no other country on the planet where you could do this for. In the United States of America, someone being like, I don't like Estonia. Fuck Estonia. And then they're like, okay, we're removing your diploma. That would be ridiculous. If someone came out and was like, I think Iran is a fundamentalist shithole that needs to be bombed, no one would fucking bat an eye, okay? So no, this is not like post 9/11. And that's precisely the reason why. That is precisely the fucking reason why a lot more people are angry. Because they are not Palestinian. They are not Israeli. They are Americans. And as Americans, they care about their own personal lives and their own personal livelihoods. They're far too invested in what's going on in their own lives. And even though they have a decent dose of Islamophobia baked into their collective consciousness, guess what? It's not a fucking Muslim that's stopping them from saying shit. It's Israel. That's the way they see it. And they don't just see it as Israel stopping them from saying shit. They see it as Jews stopping them from saying shit. And that's how anti-Semitism explodes. Because Israel not only has these advocacy groups, but they don't just say this is an Israel advocacy group. They say this is a Jewish advocacy group. They say our advocacy is around combating anti-Semitism. They constantly package Israel's actions with Judaism falsely, with this dangerous false conflation. Fuck. So that's the way Americans approach it. If you don't understand this, I don't know what to fucking tell you. Okay? Bigotry is a very powerful motivator for a lot of dumb Americans. In a time of unprecedented stupidity, you're seeing a lot of Americans look at the situation and not see it in the appropriate framework and not recognize it in the appropriate lens. They don't look at this and go, well, this is actually America doing all this death and destruction. No, they think it's Israel doing all this death and destruction, and they have an unprecedented amount of influence from the perspective of the average American and an unprecedented amount of institutional control that they enforce, that they flex all the fucking time in an effort to silence Americans. So then Americans go, all right, they're doing this for Jews, I guess. Jews do control the media, I guess. It leans into pre-existing stereotypes that are incredibly dangerous and also false. Because Americans, that's the reason why I always say, like, one of the greatest identifiers of someone being anti-Semitic is when they think America is a small bean in this, okay? That America is actually a nation that wants to do good, but it's actually Israel's like Mossad-backed blackmailing pedophilia operation that is causing American politicians to fucking feel the way that they do about Israel, and they're too silenced into submission. That's not the fucking case. American politicians love Israel. Part of that is because they get paid by Israel, but most importantly, because Israel plays a formative role in American foreign policy. It's not an accident that the Democratic Party's approach to fucking the unlimited genocide in Gaza is no different than the Republican Party's approach to the unlimited genocide in Gaza. Okay? People don't want to see that our politicians are directly at odds. Our politicians are directly at odds with our goals, with our opinions. They're directly at odds with democracy. It is the case, though. Why are you denying it? It is not the case, you dumb fuck. It's not, because the reality of the matter is every single American Jew could be an anti-Zionist, and America's approach to Israel would not fucking change. This is something that I've said since October 8th. This has nothing to do with Jews and nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism is a false shield that Israel applies in this conversation to try and stop people from talking. And since it doesn't have, I didn't mean Jews are controlling America, I meant Mossad only. No, dude, Lindsey Graham might simultaneously be in the closet and gay, but the reason why he's actually promoting Israel like the way that he does is not because he's worried about a blackmail operation. It's because he fucking loves American foreign policy. That's what he does. That's why he was pro continuing the fucking war in Ukraine without any sort of exit ramp for Ukrainians to survive, because he openly stated his desires there. He said, it's great that we're using only 5% of our military budget and offloading all of our fucking old refurbished weapons in Ukraine as their soldiers are fucking dying. But hey, we have withered away the foreign adversary, Russia's military equipment in the process. I'd say that's a great bargain. He doesn't need to be blackmailed to be pro-Israel, is my point. You're abdicating responsibility from people who are ride or die in this process. After World War II, that was the narrative the U.S. Europe leveraged as they refused to absorb Jewish refugees and redirected them to Palestine. Today, that sentiment is renewed. Like when Biden insisted on repeating, were there no Israel, no Jew in the world would be ultimately saved, which is an incredibly insane thing to say as the American president, by the way. You are the president of the United States of America. Until recently, there were more Jews here in the United States of America than fucking Israel. What are you talking about? That seems like a threat. That reads, to me, that reads as a threat. He's like, yeah, listen, without Israel, you Jews are done. You're toast. American Jews, Jack, you're toast. I'd send you all to the desert. Now, by using anti-Semitism as a false pretext to crush criticism of Israel and by conflating Zionism with Judaism, Everyone from the Trump admin to university administrators are consciously and unconsciously fueling actual anti-Semitism, narratives that Jews control everything. And that's exactly what Israel's most extreme supporters from Beitar to the ADL want, because it feeds the narrative that Jews are only safe in a powerful Israel that can protect them. And this directly aligns with the fortressification strategy of Israel itself. Israelis are recognizing their growing isolation on the world stage, but because that isolation hasn't translated into actually effective targeted sanctions and diplomatic pressure that deters Israel's genocidal instincts, Israel is actually using it as a pretext to seize more. And I say this is a short-sighted bargain. This was also part of my warning to Jews in diaspora at my Oxford speech. Okay? Because this is short-sighted. It's gonna flip. You're literally doing pro-ISIS style propaganda for Israel right now. Before you know it, all of the positive defenses of Israel and that packaging that like Israel and Jews are intertwined like this is going to very quickly, in the eyes of even American politicians that recognize the change of attitude, will turn into a negative association, because it is a negative association. It's already happened in the minds of many Americans. That's why you're seeing like anti-Semitism increasing. NYU strongly denounces the choice by a student at the Galton School's graduation today, one of over 20 school graduation ceremonies across our campus, to misuse his role as a student speaker that expresses personal and one-sided political views. He lied about the speech he was going to deliver and violated the commitment he made to comply with our rules. The university is withholding his diploma while we pursue disciplinary actions. NYU is deeply sorry that the audience was subjected to these remarks, that this moment was stolen by someone who abused the privilege that was conferred upon him. Yeah. What's really interesting about this is the room was fucking cheering. The audience was thunderous in its applause. Much to think about. Perhaps that is the reason why they had to take this disciplinary action. And his remarks were addressing a genocide. It's disgusting. It is totally disgusting. And it's unsustainable. And there will be a tide change. Okay? America's endless and unlimited support for Israel will eventually end. Okay? This is unsustainable. And there's only two options in that end. It either ends because Americans recognize that anti-Zionism is the moral position, or they are deluded into thinking anti-Semitism is the best possible way to cut this unlimited loyalty. They're deluded into thinking that this is about the Jews. And that second option, unfortunately, given the track record of Americans and their predisposition towards bigotry, is probably the option that will happen. And that's what I fear. Americans literally love adopting the most racist framework they possibly can on any issue, even if they're morally on the right side in terms of like decoupling from Israel's agenda of genocide. Israel's adopting the mindset of everyone hates us, so let us take what we can while we can, which explains their rabid land grabs from Gaza to Syria, insatiable expansionism by a genocidal entity that recognizes it may not enjoy the same impunity a couple years from now. So as more and more people in the U.S. are recognizing Israel as the inherently violent, undemocratic project it is, largely driven by the crackdown on any criticism of it, we need to recognize how that crackdown fits into Israel's wider fortress strategy. Liberalism tends towards good-bad dynamics, so the second a group is associated with bad, they immediately throw out the baby with the bathwater without any critical thinking or nuance. Exactly. The NYU student who wasted his commencement speech for performative activism is not a hero. He's a privileged, pampered, petulant child who wants more attention. This is not how adults behave. Grow up. You're a teacher. My God, how can you speak of the students this way? It's ironic because it's pure projection. Everything that Israel does is pure projection. Everything that Israel claims is pure projection. And of course, everything that Israel defenders do and say is also pure projection, because that's precisely what Shai Davide did at the behest of fucking Israel, when he like whined and cried. And here it is. Here's what he was doing on fucking college campus nonstop. Not as an American citizen, mind you, as an Israeli citizen. But did he get fucking deported for this? Of course not.
Right now, we are not okay. Right now, we...
Fucking bitch. Shai Davide implemented mass harassment campaigns against Columbia students as a fucking Columbia professor. Anyway. If Shai Davide had been black, LGBT, Hispanic, Muslim, Arab, Palestinian, and demanded the National Guard and FBI be sent to colleges to arrest, torture, and kill white supremacist, transphobe, Zionist, anti-black racists, not only would he be fired in 1 second, but the entire conservative media sphere would frame him as an evil, monstrous snowflake, easily triggered fascist who hates free speech. But Shai Davide isn't from any of those groups. He's a genocidal Zionist advocating mass arrests and violence by the FBI and National Guard for Zionism, to censor for Zionism and his precious Israel. So Barry Weiss, Aaron Sibaraum, Jonathan Haidt, Ben Shapiro, and the entire conservative anti-woke media sphere all love and adore him and have turned him into their free speech hero. Here's the full fucking speech, by the way.
We'll call on the governor. Kathy Hochul, you have the National Guard. You have terrorists in a university at New York. That's your state. Bring in the National Guard. Make sure we are going to rid this country of terrorists and terrorist supporters. We believe in love. We believe in free speech. But we believe that enough is enough.
Everyone knows this. Everyone in the media and political class who hysterically cried about snowflake SJWs and brand themselves free speech absolutists knows Shai Davide is the actual embodiment of the woke SJW easily triggered snowflake fascists, and they love him. That is precisely the reason why, by the way, that there is never any conversation. There has never been any conversation surrounding the fucking supposed free speech advocates like Ben Shapiro or Barry Weiss, for example, and their endless endeavors to fucking fire, even way before October 7, to fire and also expel students and teachers that are pro-Palestine. They have always been able to get away with this, where they, on the one hand, will be like, well, I'm free speech. I love free speech, blah, 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 blah. But then every single time, for years and years, I've talked about this for years and years. I believe I even brought it up to Charlie Kirk in the first debate that we had at Politicon in like 2016 or whatever, where I was like, you guys love talking about free speech on college campuses until that free speech revolves around being pro-Palestine. Yeah, Barry Weiss led the charge to fire David Miller because he makes Zionists feel unsafe on campus, and it worked. They actually got him fired. But Shai Davide, literally demanding the FBI mass arrest and kill students he calls terrorists, is their hero. I know I have the two stories on the docket where I will be covering the expulsion of 1 million Palestinians to Libya, which is something that the Trump administration brilliantly put together, apparently. And I also simultaneously will talk about the Supreme Court blocking Trump's efforts little by little. Okay? But before we do that, here's the last part of this equation. In the backdrop of this, as I mentioned, in the backdrop of like the Trump Middle East situation, the Middle East Gulf tour, Okay? Israel was destroying Palestinian lives in a way that resembles the immediate aftermath of post-October 7. Israeli army has also admitted that in this process, 80% of those killed in Gaza were civilians. The Israeli army itself is recognizing it. The Israeli military has admitted that more than 80% of the people killed in the attacks on Gaza since Israel breached the ceasefire 2 months ago are uninvolved civilians. Hamakam reported on the 13th of May. In response to a request from the Hebrew magazine, the office of the Israeli military spokesperson stated that 500 of the 2,780 killed in the Gaza Strip as of Tuesday are terrorists, in contrast to the remaining 2,280 people. Now, remember, that doesn't actually mean that they're enemy combatants that they killed, okay? Because these numbers are simply the raw total of men over the age of 16. That just means they are boys and men over the age of 16 all the way up until the age of 65 when they become elderly. Okay? That's it. That's what they declare, or I think it might even be 15 if I'm not mistaken. That is what they declare as enemy combatants. Okay? That's all it takes. This data shows approximately 4.5 civilians were killed for every Palestinian resistance fighter supposedly killed by the Israeli forces. For comparison, the ratio of combatants and civilians killed in the Russia-Ukraine war was 1 to 2.8, while the ratio during the U.S. war against ISIS in Syria was 1 to 2.5. Hamakam wrote that the total number of deaths in Gaza was taken from data compiled by the Palestinian Ministry of Health, whose figures were found credible by the Israeli military itself. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claimed that the ratio is just 1 civilian killed for each combatant killed. For the record, a couple things I want to mention here. Number one, Palestinians have a legal right to resist against Israel's genocide. Okay? So when they talk about killing enemy combatants, regardless of where they're killing them, and in most circumstances, they're not killing them in the process of war because they are so cowardly that they can't even engage with the Palestinian resistance groups in direct combat. They're just fucking lasering them at their homes. They're lasering them inside of hospitals when they're being treated, when they're not in combat. Okay? That in and of itself as a belligerent occupier is also a fucking war crime. The idea that we think that that is normal is also completely wrong. The legal right in this situation is in the hands of the Palestinian resistance. They have every legal right to rise up in arms and engage in a spontaneous militia movement against a belligerent occupier that is illegally destroying Palestinian lives. Make no mistake, okay? While I have openly recognized the atrocities that took place on October 7 with civilian targets, okay? Everything post October 7 is perfectly fucking valid in terms of Palestinian resistance groups killing IDF soldiers. That is legally recognized by international authorities as a spontaneous militia movement that is defending themselves, okay? Ironically enough, Israel does not have a right to defend itself by bombing Gaza, but Palestinians do have, under international law, Palestinians do have a legal right to literally shoot Israeli soldiers in the Gaza Strip. That is legal. That is 100% legal. What Israel is doing, on the other hand, is 100% illegal. Don't listen to the fucking extra noise in the background on this issue. And I'm telling you right now, people get very sensitive when I say this. People get very, very sensitive when I say this, but it is the fucking truth. And you can't say this. They'll say this is an opinion. They'll say this is a matter of disagreement, and you're pro-terrorism. No, I'm not. That's why I say I'm not pro-Israel. Okay? However, many estimates of the death toll in the Strip are much higher than the number documented by the health ministry, all this stuff. So, is there proof? What do you mean? I think what's interesting about people saying Israel had the right to respond to the October 7 shit is that a lot of people don't realize this, but when they say stuff like this in defense of Israel, they're relying on people's fear of like flipping the script back on Israel, because this argument is not even one that I maintain, okay? This argument is not one that I maintain. You want to know why? Because this argument means that Palestinians, no matter what group they're a part of, have a right to do October 7 then. Like, you're justifying October 7 by saying Israel has a right to respond after October 7. Do you understand that? Because Israel has done far worse than October 7, far before October 7. So you can't arrive at this conclusion where, like, nothing that came before justifies October 7, but everything that Israel did after October 7 is justified because of October 7. You can't arrive at this conclusion because history didn't fucking start on October 7. Were you alive on October 6, 2023? I think you were, even though you have the brain processing power of a fucking amoeba if you're making this goddamn argument. And maybe you just were built in a fucking lab on October 7, 2023. Okay? So when is your starting point? I think the Nakba is a pretty solid starting point. Or if you want to go back to it, the beginning of the Balfour Declaration is a pretty solid fucking starting point. The starting point is not when Jews were living in the region peacefully alongside their Muslim and Arab neighbors, but instead when it became a settler colonial enterprise, which started before 1947, but 1947 is the apex of this death and destruction. The Nakba, 1947 and 1948, the Nakba is the final culmination of this settler colonial enterprise. Look up Plan Dalit. Chad is giving a dozen different dates, by the way. Don't think you have a nader. What? Yeah, the reason why Chad is giving different dates. First of all, listen to me, not Chad. You're trying to talk to me. But secondly, okay, the reason why they're giving a shit ton of different dates is because there have been a shit ton of different atrocities and a lot of pain in the 77-year history of apartheid death and destruction, which started. My brother with a degree in peace and conflict studies is vehemently opposed to my claim that agrees with yours that it is legal. He says it isn't because they never signed any international agreements. It's so cold. Even if that's the case, isn't it fair to say that it's against all semblance of international order? Wait, what? No, dude. People that defend Israel love playing this game, okay, where they're like, well, no one signed a legal document. Okay, everything beyond the 1967 fucking boundaries, everything beyond the green line is fair play then. What are we talking about? How ridiculous. Like, oh, they didn't sign the legal document. Okay, my bad. Yeah, you know what that sounds like? That sounds like when that sounds like First Amendment auditors and like libertarians that get stopped for like a busted taillight or I don't know, doing meth in the car, and then a cop will stop them and they go, "Sorry, sir, I'm actually traveling under Admiralty Maritime Law. I'm traveling. I'm not driving a motor vehicle. I'm traveling, sir. You have no legal what you're doing is illegal, sir. Sorry, I didn't sign the document. I'm a sovereign citizen." It's like, okay, well, you're going to jail anyway, dumbass. Now, of course, the situation is different because legality is only as important as those who are willing to enforce it. You know? But none of that matters. What matters is what people can see in this, what people can see. People can recognize right from wrong, because legality is also no substitute for morality. Not only do the Palestinians have a legal right here, but they also have a moral obligation. Do you understand? That's it. People don't want to have this conversation on either ground. They just try to obfuscate and muddy the waters and make it seem as though there is a good reason for all of this death and destruction when there clearly isn't one. Okay? Stop saying unalive in my chat. Also, resistance to invasion and occupation is legal under the general rights that every people have, as recognized by the United Nations. You don't have to be a signatory to anything to have those rights. Yeah, you don't have to be a fucking officially sanctioned state either. You are absolutely correct. Yes. That's why I used the careful terminology of spontaneous militia movements. And the same goes for the West Bank as well, for the record. The concepts of genocide and apartheid were established and retroactively persecuted. Committing these crimes are crimes, even if Nazi Germany didn't sign a document that prohibited genocide. That too. But in this day and age, in the post-Holocaust world that we live in, obviously, the reason for why genocide is not measured on the basis of its success of what percentage of the population has been ethnically cleansed, but instead on intention, is for that reason. Because laws don't fucking matter in this process if you prosecute it after the fact. The goal of both genocide studies and the genocide statutes is created, or the apartheid statute is created around making sure that this doesn't happen again. The entire point of Holocaust studies and genocide studies in general is so that this doesn't happen again. Never again doesn't mean never again just to Jews in Germany, in Greater Germany and fucking Eastern Europe. It means never again. People will be like, no, genocide is only valid if it comes from the fucking Champagne region of France, you know?